I think the most important skill I'll bring to Congress is the ability to truly listen. Throughout my career as an attorney, I've sat across from people going through some of the hardest moments of their lives, families facing eviction, survivors of domestic violence, and individuals who felt like the system had forgotten them. What they needed first and foremost wasn't just legal representation. They needed someone who would listen with compassion, treat them with dignity, and understand their reality. As a prosecutor, that same principle carried over, listening to victims, listening to communities, and recognizing that justice isn't just about enforcing the law, it's about making people feel safe, respected, and heard. Too often, politicians talk at communities instead of listening to them. I've built my career doing the opposite, listening first and then taking action. And that's exactly how I will serve in Congress. I also understand socioeconomic disparities because I've lived them. As a child, I attended Detroit public schools. During one semester, we didn't have textbooks, and my teacher, Mr. White, made copies of the lesson plans, paying out of his own pocket. That stayed with me. Years later, my family moved to Farmington Hills. I graduated from Farmington High School and saw firsthand how a child's zip code can determine the quality of their education. That didn't sit right with me then, and it doesn't sit right with me now. As a congresswoman, I will listen to every voice because where you come from should never determine how far you can go. So for me, representation starts with independence. That's why I'm running a fully grassroots campaign. I'm not taking corporate PAC money, and I'm not taking any money from APAC or any other special interest groups. I don't believe the donor class, corporations, and foreign leaders should dictate our policy. Since Citizens United, we've seen an explosion of outside spending that allows corporations to have an outsized influence on our elections. That's not how a democracy is supposed to function. When you remove that influence, it allows you to show up honestly for your constituents. If residents of our district are raising concern, whether it's about large AI data center developments, which I oppose, or any other issue, I'm going to meet with them, listen, and make decisions based on what's best for the community I serve. It also means thinking about long-term impacts on our environment, including protecting the Great Lakes, which hold 20% of the world's surface fresh water. It means respecting the ecosystems and communities that depend on them. From the Great Lakes Migratory Bird Flyway that supports millions of birds each year to honoring tribal treaty rights that have safeguarded these waters for generations. I am not beholden to corporations or special interest groups. I owe my fidelity to the people, and that means I'll be accountable to them every single day. Because representation isn't just about access, it's about trust. And trust is built by listening, showing up, and standing with your community. My top goals or priorities are shaped by what I've heard from people across this district. First, lowering the cost of living and making sure people can actually afford their basic needs is my number one priority. That means tackling the everyday costs families are struggling with, from groceries to housing to childcare, but also lowering the cost of gas and utilities so people can afford to get to work and keep the lights on. It also means fighting for Medicare for all, because no one should go bankrupt for getting sick in the richest country in the world. Secondly, I'm committed to protecting our democracy and our civil liberties. As an attorney, I took an oath to uphold the U.S. Constitution, and I take that oath seriously. That means defending due process, protecting the right to vote, and standing up for the fundamental freedoms that define who we are as a nation. Watching the delicate threads of our democratic institutions come undone has been alarming and, for me, deeply personal. My parents lived under an authoritarian regime. They witnessed firsthand what happens when governments operate without accountability, when people can be disappeared, when women are subjected to sexual violence, and when basic human rights, such as the freedom of speech and the freedom to protest, become a death sentence, similar to what we witnessed in Minnesota. As an immigrant, I also understand how difficult and at times dehumanizing the pathway to citizenship can be. I've spoken with individuals who have been placed in detention centers and with families who have had loved ones deported, treated without dignity, without respect, and too often without due process. This is not who we are supposed to be. That's why I support abolishing ICE. We need an immigration system rooted in humanity and accountability, because no agency should operate without transparency or constitutional guardrails. Additionally, I will always fight to safeguard reproductive freedom and ensure that when women and children speak out against sexual abuse, they're taken seriously and believed, and that those who abuse power are held accountable, not elevated. I will push back against efforts like the SAVE Act that make it harder for people to participate in our democracy, policies that disproportionately impact marginalized communities and women, and are designed to silence voters. And I will protect Medicare and Social Security so our seniors can retire with dignity. And finally, pursuing a foreign policy rooted in diplomacy, one that prioritizes peace, accountability, and long-term stability, is my third priority. That means avoiding unnecessary wars and making independent decisions that reflect our values, not starting illegal wars at the behest of other nations or foreign leaders. It means focusing on the needs of the American people first and foremost, ensuring our foreign policy serves our national interests while upholding our commitment to human rights and global stability. All of these priorities come back to one core idea: building a government that listens to people, protects their rights, and actually works for them. I'm running for Congress because I believe people deserve to be heard, respected, and truly represented. And I'm ready to bring that kind of leadership to Washington.
Hello, Indivisible 9. I really appreciate your interest in learning more about the candidates in this race for Congress. I'm State Senator Jeremy Moss. Appreciate you sending us 3 questions to answer. I'll read them and then I'll answer them. So question number 1 from you is, what do you think is the most important skill, experience, or knowledge that you will bring with you to Congress? So we're living through one of the most consequential moments in American history where our very democracy is on the line. I am tested, I am trusted, and I have the experience in standing up boldly for our communities in this district. In the state Senate, I've represented half of this congressional district in the legislature. And in 2022, I was the campaign co-chair for the campaign that flipped the Senate to a Democratic majority for the first time in 40 years, bringing about that historic trifecta, and I played a leading role in some of the most consequential Democratic wins in recent Michigan history. I became chair of the Elections Committee. We pushed back against the Trump-driven conspiracy theories with our election that attempted to throw out your vote. Instead, I wrote the law that implemented the 9 days of early voting, the expanded access to absentee ballots. We reduced barriers to voting, and we protected your right to the ballot box. I also was a founding member of our Gun Violence Prevention Caucus a decade ago. And with this majority, we finally enacted the first gun safety bills in Michigan in a generation that are saving lives. And I'm a barrier-breaking lawmaker. I'm the first LGBTQ member in the Michigan Senate, where we've ushered through historic legislation to protect LGBTQ and other minority rights from harm and discrimination. I've delivered results. In that first year in the trifecta in 2023, I had the most bills of any lawmaker that were signed into law. I've never been a status quo politician. In fact, I've spent my tenure in office challenging and pushing against the status quo. I am uniquely prepared in this moment to deal with and confront the chaos coming from Washington. And we've built a very wide coalition from the grassroots to the governor. I'm endorsed early by Gretchen Whitmer and Jocelyn Benson and Dana Nessel and 60 local elected officials from the district. I'm endorsed early by labor groups, including the Teamsters, the electrical workers, the laborers, the carpenters, the sheet metal workers. We're endorsed by gun safety advocates like Gabby Gifford's PAC and a variety of LGBTQ groups who want to break this barrier as well and bring our voice to Congress. And I'm a product of Oakland County. I was raised here, educated here. I'm a graduate of the Birmingham school system. I have roots all throughout this district from Ferndale to West Bloomfield. And I'm part of what the Democratic Party needs to move forward. I represent a new generation of leaders ready to stand up, fight back, and take action. We can no longer be the party that shows up to the knife fight with a pie chart. Second question. When you're in Congress, how will you show that you're representing your constituents over donors? For example, data centers are being proposed in our state and your constituents are voicing strong opposition to them, but you may have donors that would benefit from them. How would you respond? I'll lead off with the data centers part of that question. Our Democratic majority passed and I voted for the strongest regulations on data centers compared to any other state in the country. Our law protects our water supply and it ensures that no data center costs are going to be burdened on ratepayers like you and me. I support local control and community input as these proposals pop up throughout our state. We can and should strengthen the safeguards around data centers. I'm in for this work and no donor is going to stop me from proceeding forward on safeguards for data centers. But overall, yeah, there is way too much money in our politics. That's evidenced right here in Michigan as billionaires like the Maroons took a meeting with the Trump administration, made a $1 million donation to a super PAC like MAGA Inc., and then Donald Trump turns around and tries to stop the Gordie Howe Bridge project. As a state legislator, I introduced a resolution to compel Congress to pass an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to overturn the Citizens United decision, which really opened up the floodgates to dark, untraceable money into our politics. I believe we need to overturn Citizens United, and Congress must act with a constitutional amendment to do so. I also chair our Senate Ethics Committee, where I have been working for more than a decade to shine more light on the inner workings of your state government. This includes who your lawmaker met with, what emails and messages they were corresponding to one another. I want to expose that so you better understand who is influencing some of these policy decisions that come out of the state legislature and governor's office. It does not always make me the most popular person in the Capitol to try to expose my colleagues and my emails to public scrutiny, but we must continue to demonstrate that we are beholden to voters and not to donors. Question number 3. What are your top 3 goals that you would like to achieve as a congressperson? In Congress, I want to expand on our achievements that we've made here in Michigan and the expertise that I've earned in the state legislature, and want to really tackle 3 different areas. Number 1, lowering costs for Michigan families. Number 2, protecting and expanding our democracy and voting rights. And number 3, confronting Donald Trump's extremism. So let's take them one at a time. Lowering costs for Michiganders. We're going through a cost of living crisis, whether it's grocery costs that are on the rise, gas prices that are getting more and more unaffordable, healthcare that's getting less and less accessible, or the strain that is on our small businesses dealing with unpredictable and chaotic tariff policies. I'm actually leading the fight in the state legislature with my partner Dana Nessel on strengthening Michigan's price gouging law and going after corporate greed. I also wrote bipartisan legislation that was signed into law to make housing more affordable, both incentivizing the building of new affordable housing in our communities and alleviating property taxes for those who need it the most. In Washington, I will fight to put money back into the pockets of Michigan families and, most urgently, overturn the most devastating economic and healthcare effects of that big, ugly bill. Next, standing up for our democracy and protecting voting rights. I served in the legislature in 2020 as gunmen besieged the Capitol grounds to try to protest a free and fair election, and Donald Trump tried to overturn the election results here in the state of Michigan. I stood our ground. I was a leading voice against those lies and conspiracies. And when I became chair of the Elections Committee, I worked with clerks, our Secretary of State, and voting rights activists to write the law that implemented the 9 full days of in-person voting before Election Day and other securities to our election to make sure that our free, fair elections do produce an unquestionable, accurate election result here in the state of Michigan. In Congress, I'm gonna use that expertise that I've earned here in Michigan and that reputation on voting rights to confront and oppose the SAVE Act, to ensure that our elections are not federalized by Donald Trump, to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to ensure there is no voter suppression in any pocket of our country, and to ensure access to ballots nationwide. And third, fighting against Donald Trump's lawlessness and extremism. Donald Trump won a narrow 49-48 victory in 2024 and has spent the last year and more doing the most dangerous, unpopular, and chaotic things with that victory. And we have a Congress and a judiciary that is rubber stamping some of his most authoritarian measures. I am most horrified, and I think many of you are as well, with what he's doing with immigration enforcement, trampling over our Constitution, stripping people of their rights, breaching due process. In the state legislature, I am leading the fight to rein in ICE's terror in our communities. I've sponsored the bill that would prohibit ICE agents from wearing masks in Michigan for the purpose of concealing their identity and requiring them to wear identifiable uniforms. There is a rot in ICE from the top to the bottom that cannot be repaired under Donald Trump, and I think this agency should be dismantled. And in Congress, I will not vote for one penny to go to the Department of Homeland Security from allowing this agency's lawlessness to continue. This moment calls for bold leaders with the experience needed to stand up against Donald Trump and move our country in a better direction. And I believe my candidacy is the right candidacy for the 11th Congressional District. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Michelle Mary Murphy, and I'm running for the United States Congress in Michigan's 11th District here in Oakland County. Thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions. Question number 1. The most important skill, experience, or knowledge that I will bring to Congress is real life experience. I'm not speaking from theory or talking points. I'm speaking from life. You see, I've lived the struggles that I see too many families still facing. Housing insecurities, including homelessness, health crisis, also known as fighting for your life. And I've raised 5 kids through economic uncertainty as a single mom. And today, all 5 of my children are college graduates. 3 of them have their master's degrees, and 2 are currently enrolled in the master's program. And I'm a 2-time college graduate myself. Those experiences taught me resilience. They taught me faith and the importance of community. My background has been rooted in service through my work in the nonprofit sector, leadership in my community, volunteering, and serving on the board of a public charter academy during a time of transition where we worked to strengthen the enrollment, academic performance, and the community engagement. What I bring is a commitment to listen first, to lead with integrity, accountability, and to make decisions that reflect the needs of the people that I serve. And it's important to note that given the opportunity, that I will not forget where I came from or who I'm fighting for. This role isn't just about political experience. It's about how the decisions being made in Washington impact all of us everyday people. And that is what I bring. Question number 2, when I'm in Congress, how will I show my constituents that I'm representing them over donors? First, my constituents are my donors because this is a grassroots campaign. And at the end of the day, my responsibility is to the people I serve. And I say that as someone who is out in the community every day, showing up, listening to residents, hearing directly from them what they're going through, and earning their trust. And that matters to me. When issues come up, whether it's data centers or any other major decision, I believe that we must look at how this is going to impact people's lives. That includes jobs, that includes economic stability, and the long-term effects on our communities, on our humanity. If my constituents are raising concerns then it's my responsibility to listen, ask the hard questions, and to make the decisions that reflect their voices. Because this role isn't about power, it's about responsibility. And that responsibility is to the people that I plan to take an oath to serve. And question number 3, my top priorities are rooted in what I'm hearing every day across the district and the urgency that people are feeling right now. My first priority is economic stability, economic dignity. People are working hard every single day, some 40, 50, and I'm even hearing 60 hours a week, 2 and 3 jobs, and still struggling to make ends meet, still struggling to afford housing, groceries, gas, childcare, and just the bare necessities. It's apparent that the cost of living is increasing. Everything is increasing, except people's incomes, and that must change. My second priority is education. Education changed the trajectory of my family's lives, and I want every child in District 11, across our great state and throughout our great country, to have the same opportunity. But I also understand that everyone won't choose college, and that's okay. But it is imperative that we open doors and even more doors of opportunity to create real accessible pathways for people to succeed and to be able to build stable and healthy lives. And my third priority is protecting people's well-being and their futures. That includes access to health care, reproductive care, and protecting the programs like Social Security that people have worked their entire lives to depend on. These are not abstract issues. These are real concerns that affect real people, and they deserve real urgency. I'm running to open doors for our children and for our adults seeking a better path, or even in some instances, a second chance. For our veterans who deserve more than just a thank you for your service, but they deserve real opportunity to succeed. For our seniors, for our small businesses, for our communities, and for our democracy. I'm running because when people have the chance to thrive, we don't just change individual lives. We strengthen entire communities. We create safer, stronger neighborhoods. And that is how we build a better future. I'm excited about making a real difference for all of us because I believe that government must serve all of us. And that's exactly why this campaign is called Michelle for Us. I'm Michelle Mary Murphy, and I will be honored to have your support.
I'm John Paul Torres. I'm running for Congress here in the 11th Congressional District. I've lived in the district for over 30 years, raised my family here, and I love it. I'm on the Waterford School Board. I've served probably for 12 years, and I've worked 25 years in government. Now, what would I bring to Congress, or what is most important? Well, I go back to my life experience. So my wife and I, we had our first daughter when we were 19 years old. We were just teenagers. So we were recipients of a lot of governmental assistance programs. So not only do I believe in those programs, I have succeeded from those programs. I have utilized those programs as a working parent. So when my daughter was born, I was in 1998. I was making $5.10 an hour working at Arby's. I was 19 years old, And I knew I had to do something with my life. So I rolled into community college. I went to Oakland Community College. I went for 2 years using the low interest student loan program. Went on to transfer to Oakland University, get my bachelor's degree in political science, and went on to get my master's degree in public administration at the University of Michigan, and then postgraduate work at Michigan State University. And my wife as well. We put each other through school. We both utilized low interest student loan programs. We lived in government subsidized housing just off campus when we were students at Oakland University. Our daughter was a WIC child, women, infant, children. So we use those programs to give her nutrients. My wife and I lived in the government subsidized housing, as I said. My daughter was a Head Start child, right? She didn't have parents who could afford to put her in preschool. She needed to be kindergarten ready. We enrolled her in Head Start and utilized the program, and it succeeded for my daughter. And what she was able to achieve in her years, coming up K through 12 and on to college and to law school. She's now an attorney. So we're very proud of her. But we look at those kinds of programs, and those are the very ones that are being cut that we're seeing by this administration under the big bill. And my story, my wife and I's story, my family's story is a testament to the benefits of those programs. So when I get to Congress, I'm going to be somebody who's going to fight for the working class, for the working poor, for the people that utilize these benefits, not as a handout, but as a hand up, as an opportunity to get them back on a path so that they could have the successes. And look at me, 28 years later, I'm in a position in my life where I can run for the United States Congress. So I think my experience is going to be vital. It's going to be key. And I think it separates me from any other candidate in this race. When you are in Congress, how will you show you are representing your constituents over the donors? Well, I would say look at my campaign finance report. That'll tell you. I have over 1,200 individual donors to my campaign. The average donation is approximately $46. I'm proud of that. I don't have the big donors. I don't have the wealthy donors. But what I do have is the people that are behind me, the people that believed in me. I believe I'm on track to be the person with the most individual donations this quarter. Our quarter's going to end in a couple of days here. And I think I'm going to have the most donors. Now, will I have the most money? I will not, because I don't have the wealthy donors. My average contribution isn't the $800, the $900, the $1,000. It's more along the lines of the $47 and the $48 and the $20 and the $5 that people give me. But nobody's buying me, right? And that's why you're going to get what you get with me, right? I stand by my values, my principles, who I am. I have a strong backbone. I've worked in government for 30 years. I've been in elected office for 12 years, representing 110,000 people in this congressional district already. And I've been in those rooms where the pressure's on you, where people are telling you to vote another way. And you got to stick by your values and who you are as a person. And for me, I'm a progressive Democrat. I'm a working class Democrat. I'm somebody who believes in the benefits of many of these programs that are available. And I'll compromise, sure. But there's a time and place where you don't compromise, right? When it comes to funding ICE, or when it comes to cuts in healthcare or cutting the subsidies in healthcare, right? So for me, you're going to know what you get by looking at my donor list and looking at who I represent. I think that anybody that knows me who is represented by me right now in the Waterford, White Lake portion of West Bloomfield, Lake Angeles, the areas, they all know what they're getting with me. They know who I am because they've known me for years. What are your top 3 goals? What would I like to achieve what as a congressperson? So I think my top 3 goals, one is comprehensive immigration reform. We need it in this country. We're seeing the attacks by ICE on communities of color, people that look like me, that look like my family, that are attacking people for the Supreme Court. If you speak a different language, you look different, you speak with an accent, they can come after you. They can stick you in a detention center, right? There's no due process anymore. We need that comprehensive immigration reform. We need a pathway to citizenship. Let's start with the DACA kids. I think everybody can agree on that. And then let's go for the parents. Let's get DACA parents, deferred action for the parents of Americans. They call it DAPA. Let's get them a pathway to citizenship. just like the amnesty that was afforded in the 1980s, and that many of my family members were recipients of. I come from a family of immigrants. I'm a first generation American born. Both my brothers and I were the first to be born in America. In my family, I had many cousins who I grew up with, who I never knew were undocumented, who were deported as adults. Some are DACA, did receive DACA, and others are still trying to find a pathway to citizenship, to stay in the country that they know no different. You know, this is the country that they've grown up in their whole lives. They're brought their babies. My father, he was a undocumented immigrant. He came from Mexico in the 1960s, made his way up to Michigan, walked through the Jim Crow South when he came, and but he was inspired by the civil rights movement. He got to Michigan, he marched with Dr. King, and he was so proud of that he was able to eventually obtain his citizenship, and then he went on to serve in the United States Army. So my father's story is, you know, he was a former undocumented immigrant who went on to serve, you know, in the United States Army, then came home and worked on the auto line for 40 years, union organizer. That's why I grew up in the Union Hall, you know, fighting for the jobs of the working class when they closed down the Pontiac Motors plant in the 1980s. You know, I watched my father and his union brother and sister. So I believe in the union. I've been a union member 80% of my career. So I think, you know, the pathway to comprehensive immigration reform is one. Two, education is another one. That's very important to me as a school board trustee. I'm seeing the attacks by the Trump administration on education, the taking of federal dollars. We're underfunded in IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Act. That's the special education dollars, right? They only fund us at about 40% of the 100 we should be getting. Let's talk about ESSER dollars, the monies that we were utilizing to get kids back on track post-COVID. Believe it or not, 5 years, 6 years later, kids are still struggling. Test scores are still not to where they were pre-pandemic. And it's primarily in low socioeconomic communities, the pockets of the communities here in my community that I serve, right? Communities of color. And we were using those dollars for after-school programs, you know, tutoring programs, summer learning programs, laptops, programs on the laptop for kids to take home during break, right? We don't have those monies anymore. Those are being taken by the Trump administration. Free lunch programs. You can't feed a kid. I mean, you can't teach a kid if they don't have food in their belly, right? Social, emotional, mental health dollars, right? We need those. We need those in education. Kid needs to be fed. Kid needs to have their mental health okay. Then they can start to learn. So these are the things that the Trump administration has been taking away. So education is key. Funding for education for our public schools is something I will fight, you know, tooth and nail for, to make sure that our kids are okay and our systems and our public school systems are good, and that, you know, we can teach the kids and give them what they need. And then I'd say lastly is affordability. Of the three issues, the affordability is key, you know, and I look at the big bill. That is the big one for me, right? Cuts to Medicaid, cuts to Medicare, cuts to student loan programs, you know, limitations on student loan programs. These very programs that my wife and I use, right, to get through school, to give our child a better opportunity. And these are things that hinder the working class, the people who are low socioeconomic, or the people who are trying to get themselves on a better path, right? And when we look at that bill, 80% of the benefits are benefiting the top 10% of Americans. $1 trillion in cuts went to the top 1% of Americans. It's not okay, right? And we need normal people who understand that and who have lived that experience of these benefits and these these programs to be in Congress.
Hello, I'm Don Ufford, and I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives here in the Michigan's 11th Congressional District. I'm an engineer, a husband, a builder, a dad, and I'm running to make life better for all Michiganders. I'm a political outsider, and like millions of other Americans who are tired of the politicians that got us into this mess, I want to run because I have real-world experience that I can apply. And, you know, my experience builds on raising a family here in Michigan and experiencing what, you know, real families and voters experience every day, struggling to make sure that they can afford and provide for their families while helping and volunteering in the community. Candidates like me are Trump's worst nightmare. I grew up on a farm. I got a great job at Ford that I was able to use to bring our family into the middle class. And you know what? I was able to raise that family here and experience everyday lives that people experience here in Michigan. And, using that, I was able to go on to work in the Biden Department of Commerce, where I worked on the CHIPS and Science Act to bring good jobs to Michigan. And then I went over to the Biden White House, where I was asked to work on the EV transition so we could help expand that and make things better for Michiganders. But then I left in 2025 because I couldn't stand Trump's chaos, corruption, and cruelty that was going on. And I thought I could do a lot more by standing up against Trump and fighting against Trump by running for the U.S. House. I've never run for office before, and that allows me to reject all corporate PAC money. I haven't taken any in the past, and I'm not taking any now. I'm the first one in the race to declare that I'm not taking any corporate PAC money. And that enables me to fight against business as usual with the career politicians in Lansing and Washington. And I'm going to be out there and I'm going to make sure that I'm fighting to ban corporate PAC money, ban congressional stock trading, fight for term limits so people aren't forever career politicians while they're out there, and make sure that once politicians are done in Congress, they don't just go and be lobbyists for those very same corporations. In March, a $242 million rate increase was rubber stamped by the Lansing Commission. I'd say that's unbelievable, except we all know that utility companies give career politicians corporate PAC money. And guess what? That corporate PAC money influences somebody. And here we see it. Rate increases coming through, lack of transparency in a data center debate, lack of people standing up for and fighting for making sure our communities have a voice. Well, that's just what Trump does. Trump is doing the same thing. This is the same type of corruption we see in Washington right now under Trump, where Trump's cronies have unfettered access to the White House. And then they have the opportunity to spend money where they want to spend it, and they accumulate power. And now they're taking over the media companies, so they're going to be able to throttle our communications. That's wrong. That's not fair. And when I go to Washington, I'm going to fight against Trump and his billionaire buddies that are taking advantage of the system. How you run your campaign is how you're going to govern. And that's why I stood up and said, and I was the first one to do it, to say, I'm not going to take any corporate PAC money, because I want to make sure that we're listening to and accountable to the voters here in Michigan. And here's what I'm planning to do my first 3 months in Congress. I'm going to, number one, fight to ban congressional stock trading, because that's flat out wrong. Number two, I'm going to fight to restore the cuts to the ACA, Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, Medicare, and fight for a public option. And number three, I'm going to hold the Trump administration accountable for their corrupt acts that they've been doing and how they've been fighting back with their abuse of power. So I'm going to fight to defund Trump's ICE, fight against that SAVE Act, which is stripping away our voting rights, and make sure that we're holding agency secretaries accountable by impeaching those that are breaking the law. I'm funded by normal people. No political leadership PACs, no corporate PACs, and more contributions from individual contributors than any other candidate in this race. That means I'm going to fight for Michiganders and do what's right. I spent my life building things. When I was working at Ford, I had to work hard to make sure we were able to get 60 vehicles an hour off the end of the line every day. That's working hard and delivering. Unfortunately, most of the career politicians in Lansing and Washington haven't had those real-world jobs where they knew they had to deliver every day, every hour. I think that's a problem, and that's why I'm going to Washington, to take that experience of having to deliver and get things done. That's why I'm centering my campaign on building things here in Michigan. to help make life better for all Michiganders. Number one, I'm going to fight to create more jobs here in Michigan by expanding the opportunity for unions to organize and raising the minimum wage. If we build more things here in Michigan, we'll lower costs for all Michiganders. Number two, I'm going to fight to protect our health care and expand the Affordable Care Act and remove those cuts from Medicaid and Medicare and ensure that we have a public option. And number three, I'm going to fight to protect our freedoms, protect voting rights and reproductive freedom, and protect the right for Michiganders to speak up and speak out, because we need to be able to do that and hold this Trump administration accountable. I'm ready to get that done because I'm an outsider. I've rejected all corporate PAC money and I've raised a family here and worked here. I'm going to continue to fight for what's right and fight for all Michiganders. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Don Ufford, that's U-F-F-O-R-D, and I'm running for the U.S. House of Representatives here in the Michigan 11th. You can check out more about my campaign at uffordformichigan.com. That's Ufford, the number 4, Michigan.com. Thank you.